Hello everyone, thanks for joining me back in the garden today. This week, I'm just doing a walkthrough of the garden as it's going through its dying phase. I have a lot of things still green and with life, but there's a lot of things that have died off and been pulled out of the garden. So my compost bins are really full, and I originally was going to use one bin for one season and then turn it and then use the second bin. But with all the stuff that I have in the garden, that didn't work out. So I'm just filling the bins, and then as they decompose over the winter, I'm going to combine them into one. And as they reduce in size and continue to compost, then I'm going to turn them and then just fill them the next year. But that's the status of the compost bins. Oh, and I have no plans to extend it because I want to add more into the garden. So what I'm going to do instead, in this area where I was going to extend it, I'm going to put a 3x3 bed for next year because there's different tomato varieties I want to plant. Around to this side. So in here, I had previously planted golden beets, kohlrabi, turnips, and then red beets. The kohlrabi and turnips are the empty space. They were really destroyed by insects. They ate most of the leaves, so they didn't survive. Somehow the beets have survived, so I have both varieties of beets still in here, and they have about a month to go before it would be harvest time. The strawberry patch is doing real well. I have a lot of runners that have turned into plants, so once it gets a little colder and the leaves die back, I'm going to look for what is a runner versus what is the main plant and do some thinning out. But the ones that I transplanted from the towers along the edges here have taken off really well. I didn't have much dieback. And a couple weeks ago, I found a potato plant in here, which was funny. I guess from my compost bed, potato plant was in here. But there's a Nasturtium right over here too. I'm just gonna leave this guy, see what it does. No plans to take that out. Over here to the turmeric plant. With the sun shining, I'm not sure you can tell. The plant itself is gorgeous. It's nice and big, but unfortunately, it's lost some of its luster. It doesn't have that nice, deep green color anymore. It's starting to turn a lighter green color, and I'm sure that's due to the nights getting under 60 degrees here in New Jersey. So I will be harvesting this. I'd love to try to transplant it inside, but I think I damaged the root, and I'm hesitant that there are bugs all within the bag, so I don't want to bring that in to the house at all. Moving over to the sweet pepper patch. A lot of the peppers have matured, and as the weather starts to turn cooler, it's not growing as much as before. So I do have some green fruits on the shishito and some red on the shishito. Got some color down here for the sweet peppers. I don't have many Hungarian yellow wax. I have a lot of green tangerine dream, but the peppers are making their last push before the fall, but it's definitely not as laden with fruit as it was before. I'm starting to harvest my plants as well to overwinter, so I'm going to try to take 2 of the sweet peppers in here and overwinter those along with some of the other peppers. It's almost time to harvest the sweet potatoes. They're still very, very green and growing everywhere now that I don't have as much in the garden. So I'm anxious to see what I will get from harvesting these bags. I didn't have a bad harvest from the bag that I harvested back in September. It was just that the sweet potatoes weren't very thick, they were very thin. So we'll see what happens in a couple of weeks here with the sweet potatoes patch. Well, it's really a carrot and radish patch. I've got some radish coming up. They've been in for about 2 weeks, so they'll be harvested in about a week. The carrots still have about a month to go. And my sunflowers look like it is on the verge. Let me see if I can get a better shot. On the verge of opening up soon. They didn't get to be as tall as I wanted them to be because they were being crowded out by the previous crop of radish. But I didn't prune these. I let them grow as they were. So they've got multiple bulbs on them in different levels, unlike what I try to do during the summer, which is get them to harvest one big, large bulb. With the habaneros, I still have quite a bit of fruit on my habanero plants, specifically the chocolate habaneros. I have some orange as well over here, but my habaneros I'm not going to as well touch for a couple of weeks. They're still majorly producing. It seems that with my hot peppers, they are late, so I get a lot of hot peppers later in the season into September and October. But I've got some jalapenos still on the vine. These guys are being real great producers. Now the sweet cherry hot peppers, they're kind of dying off and leaning over. I'm not going to try to overwinter any of these. I'm just harvesting seed from these particular plants. Another big winner this season were my Tabasco. This was just harvested, so there's not a lot of ripe fruit, but I still have a lot of fruit on here. The plants themselves are starting to show signs of a bit of disease, but this late in the season, I'm not spraying as much as I used to. The ginger that was planted in between, still looking pretty good. I'll be harvesting that soon as well. So this is my natural and wild Nasturtium bed. From earlier in the season, there was a humongous orange, golden colored Nasturtium here, which dropped all its seeds, and when I tried to plant lettuce, I got more Nasturtium. What's interesting is that now that it is coming back, the plant is not as vibrant as it was. It's pale yellow, and it has more of orangey in the center. So that came back a little different. From the lavender that I transplanted, it looks like I had a couple of plants that did take the transplant. They weren't too far gone. I've got one there and one right here that took the transplant pretty well, but I still have a lot of bare areas. So next season I will be growing from seed again to fill in this bed. I did enjoy, even though I didn't make satchels, I did enjoy walking around the bed and getting a fresh whiff of lavender as I walk by. So I'll be pruning this come next season and putting more in. The two aronia berries are planted here and they look like they're doing well. It's hard to tell with the season coming to an end, so they're losing leaves, which makes me think they're not doing well. But the leaves didn't turn yellow, they're just turning red. So I'm hopeful that next season they will come back and bear a lot of fruit. The blackberries have gotten larger. They're growing outward, look really well. No yellowing, no die off, no nothing with these. So I believe that they were planted properly and they are taking to their new location very well. And then the last thing to see here are the 5 blackberry plants. Now these have me concerned to an extent. The leaves did turn red, but the plant lost a lot of leaves. So come next season, I am hopeful that this is just shock of transplant and die off at the end of the season and not that there's anything wrong with the plants. And one last update is to the lily beds in the front yard. I've topped them up for the winter with dirt and some straw, and the bulbs I did not move this year. I left them in place. So we'll see what happens with them. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the content.